It is June, which means we are in the midst of the summer of games. Things are getting announced, things are getting leaked, things that might get announced are maybe also getting leaked, and there are two remakes in particular that I really want to talk about that I've been hearing rumblings about, so let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to Wavelengths. It's still a show about video game news. I am still Brendan Bigley. There are two remakes that I've been hearing some rumblings about, both of which are games I've always wanted to play but have put on hold because I've been hearing rumors about remakes. Always puts you in a weird position when you're like, do I play the original right now or do I wait until a hypothetical leaked remake eventually surfaces? And this first one, which is Persona 3, I think is the most exciting to me. PersonaCentral.com noticed that p3re.jp, which is a domain name owned by Atlus, got updated this morning, June 7th, 2023. See, the Persona 3 remake has been speculated for a long time, and even longer than that, fans have just wanted a Persona 3 remake. Persona as a franchise has become more and more of a global phenomenon over time, and the weird thing about this trilogy of 3, 4, and 5, which a lot of people would consider as like one era of Persona in particular, is that 4 and 5 both have these definitive editions, Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal, both of which are available on pretty much all consoles. You can get them on Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, etc. Persona 3 is in this weird spot where it was originally released for the PS2, got a quote-unquote definitive edition called Persona 3 Fez, which added a bunch of story content, some quality of life stuff, but then got another version on the PSP called Persona 3 Portable, which is the version that you can go and get right now on Switch and Xbox and all the aforementioned consoles. The thing about Persona 3 Portable, though, is that there's a huge step back in graphics, obviously because the PSP is not as powerful as the PS2, but they also added a whole second protagonist, a whole second character that you can play as, specifically with the idea, and they tell you this when you start the game and pick her as the protagonist, that is a protagonist that you should play as if you've already played the game. The idea being, I guess, if you played the game on PS2, they would still want you to buy the PSP version and feel like you had new content and new stuff that you could check out. And because the Persona games are so about relationship building specifically, having a different protagonist with a different point of view and different possible relationships adds a whole other layer of story to Persona 3 Portable. And for the longest time, fans have wanted a marriage of those two versions, Persona 3 Fez and Persona 3 Portable. In a lot of ways, it seemed like an inevitability. In the same way Final Fantasy VII Remake was almost an inevitability, Persona 3 getting a remake really seemed like it was something that needed to happen to tell the full and complete story of Persona 3. A couple months ago, we saw some alleged leaked images and a leaked video of what the Persona 3 remake might look like, which really puts it on the level of Persona 5, which is really, really exciting. Because a lot of fans of the franchise who have played all of these games point at Persona 3 as being hypothetically the best one in terms of its story, its characters, and specifically its thematic core, the things that it's trying to say as a game. And the idea of marrying that story and Persona 5's high bar for graphical fidelity and just stylishness is really, really exciting. So you might be wondering, why is it so exciting that Atlus has updated this domain name? Well, there's a history of this, and on PersonaCentral.com, they have a list of previous domain name examples showing the correlation between Atlus updating their domain name and when they announced the game. Persona Q2, which had pq2.jp, registered April 18, 2017, sat for a while, updated July 27th, 2017, that got announced 6 days later. Persona 5 Royal, which was p5r.jp, registered April 11, 2017, got updated December 25th, 2018, and then the game got announced 5 days later. And considering, again, we are in the summer of games, there are events happening left, right, and center, seems like we're probably going to hear about the Persona 3 remake pretty soon. The two best bets would probably be Summer Games Fest or the Xbox Showcase, and my money is on the Xbox Showcase, which is going to be on Sunday. And specifically just because it feels like Xbox and Atlus and Sega specifically have had this ongoing relationship that has been building over the past couple of years. You see things like the entire Yakuza franchise showing up on Game Pass, all the Persona games when they get released end up on Game Pass day one. It just feels like they're kind of nurturing that relationship, and I could see them saying, hey, announce that Persona 3 Remake is coming, specifically at our showcase. It'll be a huge deal. It'll be really exciting, and maybe it'll even come straight to Game Pass. And if you wanted any more proof that this is probably going to happen pretty soon, Atlus has a panel at the Anime Expo on July 3rd where the description says, join Atlus West and be the first to know about all the exciting happenings. By the time you're reading this, the cat is out of the bag. That sounds like there's going to be an announcement. That sounds like copy that probably shouldn't have been approved or have gone live yet, if I was to guess. But that also says to me there's going to be some kind of big announcement. And even if it's not Persona 3 Remake, it could hypothetically be Persona 6, which is another game we know is in development, but haven't seen anything of. The fact that we've seen some hypothetical leaks of Persona 3, all this stuff with a domain name. It just seems like it's going to happen, and I'm really excited to see if it does. I want to play that video game, man. Persona 3 seems awesome. I want to play it. The second remake I want to talk about comes from our good friend, the NVIDIA leak, which, if you recall, a couple of years ago, I think it was at this point, there was a huge leak of games that were supposedly coming to NVIDIA GeForce Now, which is NVIDIA's streaming service. Now, this leak in particular came from a breach, which means that people at NVIDIA were talking to publishers and developers, said, hey, what are you working on? Should it come to GeForce Now? This publisher said, here's what we're working on, and it should come to GeForce Now. Somebody at NVIDIA put it in a document, and that document leaked. And that document has proven to be pretty much completely accurate. Time and time again, PC ports that we didn't know about, games we didn't even know were in development, have shown up and have proven that this leak is probably true. God of War getting ported to PC was a big one. Destroy All Humans was a big one. The Grand Theft Auto remake of that trilogy was another big one. But the one that I've always been most excited about from that entire leak was the potential remake of Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX is kind of in this weird spot where it is rounding out this little trilogy of Final Fantasy games. Even though this franchise is known for reinventing itself over and over and over again, Final Fantasy VII was such a huge hit that, unsurprisingly, Square Enix decided to make some games that were kind of in the same lineage as Final Fantasy VII for the next couple iterations. Final Fantasy VIII and IX, both in particular, although they have their huge differences, obviously, from VII, followed kind of a similar structure, kind of a similar combat system, but Final Fantasy IX has this really like cartoonish high fantasy energy to it that is just infectious. I mean, it's so lovely. Because of all this is a game I've really wanted to play for a long time. It seems so great and it seems so up my alley, but by the time I really sat down to ask myself, like, hey, am I going to play this game? The NVIDIA leak happened and I saw that this was on it. It's like, oh, okay, cool. All that said, what is the news? Jeff Grubb on Games Past Morning over at Giant Bomb said, and I quote, I heard very recently, Final Fantasy IX Remake is real. It is happening. He then goes on to speculate that it's not going to be as ambitious as Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, like, what on earth could be as ambitious as Final Fantasy VII Remake? You know what I mean if you've played it. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if this is on the same level as something like Crisis Core, for example, which is another game that was released on the PSP that, you know, got this huge amount of polish and then was re-released cross-platform. Final Fantasy IX is, you know, a PS1 RPG with pre-rendered backgrounds and very polygonal-looking sprites for characters running around. And I just feel like it's a game that could use a fair amount of polish, but I don't know if it needs the same level of polish or the same level of rethinking as Final Fantasy VII Remake. Even though the word that's being used to describe all of this is remake, I would imagine, if I had to guess, if I had to put money down, that this is going to be more functionally a remaster by the time it comes out. I'm hoping, at least, fingers crossed, that the game ends up playing functionally the same as it did on the PS1. And again, that could come with a bunch of quality of life improvements and stuff, but I'm just thinking that game with that story, with better graphics, seems like a recipe for success. But also, I have no idea when this thing is coming out. I mean, when you look at the year for Square Enix, they have Final Fantasy 16 soon. They hypothetically have Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, which is the sequel to Final Fantasy 7 Remake, coming out at the end of the year, which I still don't believe is true. I think that game is going to get pushed, although they have been doing every single day. They've been tweeting out these little weird developer comments that are like, will Final Fantasy VII Rebirth have a story? Yes. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will have a story. You will see characters and progress through narrative plot beats. I don't know why they've been doing that every day, but again, that's another thing where they've been doing it leading up to an event, probably either Summer Games Fest or, again, the Xbox Showcase, probably Summer Games Fest. And who knows, maybe with that announcement, we get a release date and it's still coming out this year and it doesn't get pushed. There's something to me, though, about releasing Final Fantasy 16 and 7 Rebirth in the same year that seems wild. Slotting Final Fantasy 9 Remake somewhere in there, that just doesn't seem like a real possibility to me. But who knows? Whatever. It might happen. That'd be fun. I'll play it. Whenever it comes out, I'll play it. Well, that's going to be it for me today. There's a bunch of other stories I want to talk about, but I'll just put them in the show notes. This episode, let's keep it short. I feel like the last couple have been pretty long. Hey, if you like the show, please like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That'd be really helpful. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Brendan Bigley. Follow me on the internet. I don't know. I'll catch you later. Bye.